Next up, presentations and resolutions. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Begley, members of the board, we do have one presentation this evening. That is an update on K-5 ELA curriculum. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Aug.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Begley, members of the board, I am happy to have Georgine Bowman, our Coordinator of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction, and Amy Dunn, our District Orton Gillingham trainer, here tonight to share an overview of our K-5 literacy program. As you might know, the state of Ohio requires all districts to meet the requirements of science of reading, ensuring a structured, systematic, and explicit approach to teaching reading to our students. It was about 2 years ago that the state came out with this requirement as part of House Bill 33. At that time, Fairfield had just completed a K-5 adoption cycle in ELA and had purchased Fontes and Pinnell Classroom, which has never made it onto an ODE-approved list. The good news for us was that we already had a strong foundation in place. The district was using Orton Gillingham and Foundations A to Z, two programs that focus on building foundational reading skills. They did make the approved list, so those two things are on it. The challenge since then has been that one of the biggest pieces of our reading block, FPC, is not on any of the approved lists for the state of Ohio. So we were definitely one of the districts affected by poor timing. We weren't the only ones across the state affected by this at all, because we had our adoption right before all of this changed. So our gap area is in the core comprehensive category. Over the last year, we have spent time reviewing programs on the approved list, and we even collaborated with other districts who are in a similar position to us. We have decided to move to our Bookworms K-5 program, in large part because it mirrors what we are already doing in the classroom. We will start training our teachers on one of the components, on the small group differentiated instruction component, this spring. Like FPC, the Bookworms structure also includes interactive read-alouds, shared reading, independent reading, and small group instruction, which they call differentiated reading. All practices that are part of our structured literacy block now. The other positive thing about Bookworms is that it allows us to continue to use the rich literature we purchased with FPC. The FPC classroom resources and book rooms that we have are a collection of literary texts and nonfiction reading. They aren't titles exclusively published by FPC. Any reading program that you purchase is going to curate libraries for purchase, and that's why we can continue to use what we have. Having to replace these classroom and school libraries outside of our K-5 adoption cycle would be very costly. So we are thankful to be able to work with what we have until our next adoption comes up in 27-28. Just for reference, the state did give us supplemental funding, but that amount was less than half of what we spent on our last adoption. So we would have been reaching into the general fund if we had to replace all of those books. So even though we have faced some challenges with this transition, we do believe we have a strong curriculum in place to support our students in the area of literacy. So now I will turn it over to Georgine and Amy, who will go into much more detail about our ELA program.
Thank you, Mrs. Aug. We appreciate being here. Thank you, board. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for the opportunity to give you this update. We are just going to go through, am I just hitting?
Yeah, turn it on.
That would help. There we go. We're just going to go through three different components to share with you where we're at in our K-5 ELA. The first we want to share is the science of reading, what that is and how that's impacting us. We're going to look at our reading curriculum specifically, and then we're going to look at the impact on students as we've seen thus far. I'm going to turn this over to Amy to pick it up.
All right, the first thing I want to talk about is the science of reading, and that is a huge buzzword right now across education. But really, the science of reading has been around for over 50 years, and it's just a collection of research that explains how people learn to read based on studies in fields like psychology and neuroscience, but it just outlines best practices for teaching reading skills. And it'll include things like phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. All of these need to be taught systematically and explicitly, and we are pleased to share with you that Fairfield has every single one of these literacy components and that the Science of Reading recommends for effective reading instruction. When we take a deeper dive into the science of reading, what we will find is that there's one piece of research called Scarborough's Rope, and Georgine brought her visual here today. She presents this when she goes to our schools and presents to our teachers so that they understand it. But when we're looking at Scarborough's Rope, we're looking at all of these different strands that are required when we are looking at a skilled reader. And so at the top, you'll see we have word recognition, and these 3 strands to the left will then be woven together as the reader becomes more fluent and automatic. We also at the bottom have language comprehension, and these strands reinforce one another. And then slowly those strands are woven tightly together to give us our skilled readers. So when I looked at this, I thought the strands that you might not be as familiar with are the 3 at the top for word recognition, decoding, phonological awareness, and sight recognition. So I want to take a minute just to briefly describe those, and then I have short little videos from some students across our school district. So the first strand at the top is decoding, and that just means translating a word from print to speech using our knowledge of letter-sound relationships. So I have a quick video to show you of a student decoding.
What? When? Run.
So this is one of our kindergartners in our district. So not reading full sentences yet, but definitely attacking those words a letter and sound at a time. The next strand below that is phonological awareness, and this is all based on our ears, what we hear. It's the ability to recognize and manipulate sounds in a spoken language. So I have a short video for that.
Sheet. Good. All right, we're starting with the end of the word and we're adding the beginning sound. Ed, add sh. Ed. At that. Hour, add sh. Hour. Air, add ch. Air. Arp, add sh. Sharp. Ash, add d. Dash. Ouch, add k. Couch. Good. Now we're going to delete our beginning sound.
Again, all of it was auditory. They have no visual in front of them. And the final part of word recognition is sight recognition. And this is words that readers recognize instantly without having to sound them out. You might have also heard this called high frequency words.
Both. B-O-T-H. Both.
Let's put on our X-ray vision goggles.
L-O-V-E. Love.
And let's arm tap.
S-I-G-N. Sun.
So when she sees those words, it's like her brain can't not know it. It's just automatic. And that's what we want for all of our students. The next slide is another piece of this science of reading. It's just called the simple view of reading, very similar to Scarborough's Rope, but it just shows this as a multiplication problem. We need both decoding and language comprehension in order to have that strong reading comprehension fit for all of our students. So if one of those is lacking, our students will not have our strong reading comprehension as the final product.
You notice too all of the arm motion and the kinesthetic pieces to that word recognition part of the strand. That's really important for kids to have those sounds, those different activities kind of meld into their brains, and it's really important. And multisensory learning is one of the things that we focused on this year, actually in the past couple of years, and getting all of our teachers trained in that area through Orton Gillingham. So our K-5 curriculum, let's just look a little bit at what we have. As Amy introduced with her Scarborough's rope, I have made so many people make these, but I'm just going back to it because the slide's gone now. So as she emphasized with Scarborough's rope, there are many pieces for students to learn to read. No curriculum fully encompasses all those pieces effectively. So we have built our K-5 curriculum combining the best resources that we know of to meet the needs of our students. For word recognition, we have, that is this component of the rope. We utilize Heggerty, which is what you saw with the kids doing all of the motions and the listening pieces, right? For grades 1 and 2, for phonological awareness, we use Orton Gillingham in kindergarten through grade 2 for phonological awareness, decoding, and sight word recognition. And with grades 3 and 5, we also use Orton Gillingham for intervention. We also will be using bookworms for some remedial support with those skills. And these pieces support students in decoding and encoding words, which means they're applying that to individual words and letter sounds. The work done for our implementation of FPC provided teachers the knowledge and skills to support strong language comprehension. That's the other side of the road. This is where students begin to make meaning of text. Our students are exposed to rich literature through interactive read aloud, shared reading, independent reading, and small group instruction components of our reading block. This is where they experience above grade level text, at grade level text, and their just right level text to build their vocabulary, background, and literacy knowledge along with verbal reasoning, language structures, and reading fluency. So our teachers have many resources that they are using to put together to make sure that we hit all of these components of the science of reading. We have reading mini lessons, which are whole group instruction on our reading skills. We're going to begin using bookworms for differentiated small group instruction. We have classroom libraries full of literary texts for independent reading, read-alouds, and shared reading. We have decodable readers, which are stepping stones to authentic text through Orton Gillingham. We have building book rooms that have multitudes of books of literary and nonfiction text. And one of the things we love about our various libraries is that our kids see themselves in our books. They relate to the topics and the vast diversity that is reflected in the texts. What's not included in the science of reading, but is also an important gateway to reading, is writing. Teachers teach writing through writing mini lessons and students writing about their reading. This is an area that we need to continue to stress as we have seen decline across the state in students' writing abilities. Now we want to share with you what we are seeing in our data.
So I gathered some data from last school year so we could see an entire year. And our first and second grade students are all given the Orton Gillingham test, actually 3 times a year, but I'm looking at the measurements from fall to spring. This is comparing apples to apples, just so you know it's the exact same test we give at the beginning of the year and then at the end of the year to look for growth. So look at our first graders. Last fall, they only had 67% mastery of their OG skills, but by the end of the year in spring, they had hit 92%. Just know the goal for Orton Gillingham is anything above 80% is considered successful. And in our second grade, we started at 30% mastery of those concepts, but by the end of the year, they had leaped all the way to 83%. So our Second grade teachers were very happy with the growth that they had made in first grade, and I know our third grade teachers were excited to have those second graders come with that foundation in reading. We also looked then at our DIBELS data from last year, and this is based on their benchmark scores from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And again, you'll see in first grade and in second grade, our students did make significant gains in the areas of reading.
So this data shows that the spring OST scores, as you can see from 2020 to 2024, we are showing growth, and our kids are showing tremendous growth. On this slide shows that if you look at 2020, you see that the red bar goes up pretty high there. And so basically what we're seeing from 2020 till now is that we have more kids that are in that yellow, green, and orange range, which means that they are proficient or above. And this is just on the fall OST. The fourth grade spring OST trend data, again, is showing that kids are making progress. And fifth grade OST spring data. This slide is interesting because it shows our different subgroups that are measured. And what I want you to notice is that every one of these subgroups is showing growth from 2020 till 2024. And this data shows the number of subgroups that have met their performance index at each of our elementary schools. And what I really want you to notice is Lake Central had no groups meeting their PI in 2021 and now have 7. We have East that had 1 subgroup meeting PI and they now have 7. We have Compass that had 4 who now has 8. So our subgroups are making substantial gains across the years. Overall, we see the data trending in the right direction. Our teachers are providing meaningful instruction to students across all of our schools, and our students are making progress in reading. We're very proud of the work that they are doing, both our teachers and our students. We also know the work is never done. We will continue to work with our teacher groups to get their feedback and make tweaks to continue to improve our reading instruction across the district. We appreciate your time, and thank you for your continued support. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. Questions, comments?
Comments, Mrs. Dunn and Ms. Bauman and Mrs. Aug, thank you for getting all this together. You know, a couple of years ago when we looked at this and kids coming out of the C word, the pandemic, and coming in, the growth in these numbers are fantastic. And Mrs. Bauman, Ms. Aug, and I met to kind of dig deeper because I had some questions, and what you presented then is what you are continuing to present, and that's just more than just memorizing words and pictures. It's the whole your little science little thing there, yeah, your rope. But I think that all pulls together really well, especially with the dynamics of our students. Like you talk about the subgroups and how that growth is there, and there's a lot of times that we have students that come in that are brand new to the not only the school but to the country, and this is a great opportunity for them to learn and stay on course with the other students, so to speak, but not be lost in just not be left behind.
Right.
So this is great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I also want to thank you guys for bringing this presentation. I think that the curriculum looks really interesting and cool to have interactive with learning for the students, and I think that that's going to be a huge huge benefit to our students, and it shows in the numbers. You know, like it's proven. You have the graphics showing us that students are improving, and I'm excited to continue to see where they go with this curriculum. So thank you so much for presenting.
And I'll just add before we go down, Mr. President, when I visit some of the classes and I see the kids doing this, that's really impactful. because sometimes the students are different, of course, like I just mentioned, different levels, but there's a way to progress them in the whole curriculum. And that's, when I see that, that's very impactful. So.
I also want to thank you for this presentation. It is so encouraging to see the progress that's being made. And to know more about it and everything, because my daughter's in 3rd grade now, but when, she was struggling when she was in kindergarten, and she started doing the tapping. They were working on tapping then. I think then, though, it was on a card, like with her fingers. And I don't know why, but it made a world of difference when she was trying to figure things out. So it definitely kind of opened my eyes looking at this, that's part of the process, getting them engaged, getting them to pay attention to what they're doing with all the different sensory items. So thank you all, and I'm really excited to see how this keeps growing.
Yeah, well, thank you for the presentation. It's great that we have people like you working here at Fairfield and doing all this for our students. So we appreciate it.
2 quick questions. The Scarborough's rope, right? That's really interesting, the science of reading, right? So then, 2 things. One, you talked about resources for our students, teachers. Are we using strictly books, or are we using one-to-one techniques with the computers at those young ages, a combination of the 2?
Yeah, go ahead. As far as OG goes, there are decodables, like Georgine mentioned, but a lot of it is just like oral discussion, and like we had talked about, like the pounding and tapping of the sounds, and then writing words. So it, as far as Orton Gillingham goes, there's not much technology. It's been tried and true for, like we had talked about, many, many years. So it's more of a traditional approach, but like we've talked about, we've seen a lot of success with our students using the multisensory approach.
And also, they're using literary text as the foundation for their reading, which is really a wonderful experience for kids, because they're in books and reading books. They have mini lessons and things where they teach the skills. So for instance, cause and effect, or problem solution, or different things. So the teachers have resources to help support that learning through a reading mini lesson, but then they go into a text to actually apply those skills. And that's where the kids are getting that exposure to those rich literary and nonfiction texts. And so they're getting a lot of books, exposed to a lot of books over time, and applying those skills directly in the text.
Great. And then the last question. So we go back to 2020, right? And some of those results and how we've spiked since then, is there a particular class, like the 1st graders from 2020 or the 2nd graders from 2020, that 4 years later are struggling, that we're having a gap with, or are we catching everyone up in general?
Yeah. I don't, I think I'd have to look at that more closely.
Sure.
Yeah,
I
so
understand.
let us get back to you with a little bit more data on that. But I feel that overall, we're doing a good job across the grade levels. But I think, yeah, it's worth digging into to look at that a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, is there a grade level there where what happened in 2020 was just more harmful to those group of 1st graders, or to those group of 3rd graders that were reaching competency but not quite there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Great, well, thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.